The rain over Outpost Meridian 3 always fell sideways, carried by winds that howled like broken turbines. It wasn't a place anyone chose to live, more like a place people drifted into when they had nowhere else left to collapse. A rust-black graveyard of shipping crates, half-sunk shelters, and shattered comm beacons blinking weakly into the gray. Elias Ward had been here long enough that the storm no longer startled him. He'd learned the rhythm of it, the way the wind dragged its metallic claws across the walls, the way the generators coughed themselves awake after every power hiccup. He fixed things. That was his value here. Broken heaters jammed water pumps, smashed drone rotors. If it was dead, he brought it back. If it breathed, he kept his distance. Tonight, though, something broke that wasn't metal. He first saw the shape through the curtain of rain as he unloaded a crate of thermal blankets from his truck. A silhouette slumped against the collapsed perimeter fence, still, unmoving, almost swallowed by mud, slick, and shadows. For a second he thought it was debris, maybe a torn tarp caught on the wire. Then the silhouette breathed. Elias cursed softly and walked closer, boots sinking into wet soil. Lightning cracked far off, revealing the shape more clearly. A woman. Or something very close to one. She sat half-folded, one arm limp, her head lowered like even gravity had grown tired of her. Her skin was pale gold beneath the dirt, not faintly, luminous as if the stormlight caught something living beneath her surface. Her hair, soaked and clinging to her shoulders, was a deep copper black, reflecting faint warmth even in this cold wasteland. And her ears, normal, human-shaped, delicate, nothing like the exaggerated alien features he'd seen in propaganda reels. But her condition, that was undeniably wrong. Her clothes were torn cleanly in places as if cut by tools, not claws. Her wrists bore thin metallic scars, scars with patterns. Someone had strapped her into something. Someone had done this. Elias knelt slowly in front of her. "Hey," he said, gentle but clear, "you're not safe out here." No response. She didn't even look at him. Her eyes, amber, shattered with exhaustion, stared somewhere past his shoulder, unfocused, like she was watching something miles away. Lightning flashed again. Her entire body flinched. That was no ordinary fear. That was someone who expected pain the moment they moved. He shrugged off his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. She didn't resist, didn't react. Just breathed, shaky and thin. He didn't ask permission. Some things you just did. With careful, steady movements, he slipped one arm beneath her knees and the other behind her back. The moment his hand touched her side, she tensed, but didn't pull away. "You're okay," he murmured. "You're coming with me." She weighed almost nothing, too little, like someone had drained the life out of her drop by drop. He carried her through the storm, shielding her with his body as wind hurled rain sideways. No one in the outpost came out to watch. No one asked questions. People here minded their own ghosts. Inside his shelter, the warmth hit her like a shock. Her breathing quickened. Elias set her down on the only cot and stepped back slowly, palms open to show he wasn't a threat. She sat curled on herself, too still, trembling so softly he almost didn't see it. "You're freezing," he said. "Water's warm, showers safe, you won't be alone." He meant he wouldn't leave the room, but he wouldn't crowd her either. Still no answer. He guided her to the wash station, keeping distance but never letting her fall. She stepped inside with the motion of someone who had forgotten choice was an option. When the warm water touched her skin, something in her broke. Not loudly, quietly. A breath. A sob hidden behind her hand, then another. Elias stood outside the curtain, lowering himself to the floor, waiting. No demands, no questions, just presence. After a long, aching silence, the water stopped. She emerged wrapped in a towel, eyes red but clearer. For the first time, she truly saw him, not flinching, not shrinking, studying, evaluating. He nodded gently. "I'm Elias, you don't have to talk yet." She sat on the cot, pulling the towel tighter around her. Her gaze flicked to the water droplets on the floor, lingering there like they were proof of something she'd forgotten how to believe. Warmth, choice, safety. That night she didn't sleep. But she didn't cry again either. She watched the shadows, the slow pulse of the heater, the soft glow of Elias' tools at the workbench. He pretended to tinker with broken wires, but every few minutes he glanced back, making sure she was real, that she was still breathing. Outside, drones scanned the outpost with cold blue light. Inside, for the first time in years, someone had walked into Elias Ward's life who wasn't already broken beyond repair. By morning, the storm had quieted to a soft hiss against the metal walls, like the world outside was finally too tired to rage. Elias woke before the sun. He always did, and for a moment he forgot she was there. The shelter was warm, the heater humming low, and the dim glow from his tools cast familiar shadows across the floor. Then he saw her. Curled on the cot, knees pulled toward her chest, wrapped in the towel he'd given her. But it wasn't the position that struck him, it was the way her breathing had changed. Steady, controlled, not the shallow, panic-tight breaths from last night. Progress. He moved quietly, pouring water into a tin cup, trying not to startle her. Still, the small metallic clink of the kettle made her eyes snap open. Amber eyes, sharp, alert, not wild now, just ready. He lifted one hand slowly, a gesture that said, "I see you, but I won't crowd you." "Sorry. Didn't mean to wake you." She didn't answer, but she didn't shrink back either. Her gaze followed his movements, measuring everything, his posture, his distance, even the way he held the cup. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was analyzing him. He set the cup on the small table between them. Water, safe, warm. A long silence stretched between them. Then she sat up a little, adjusting the towel around her shoulders. Her fingers were steady this time. When she finally reached for the cup, Elias stepped back, giving her space. She held it with both hands, lifting it carefully to her lips. The steam rose around her face, softening her expression. He watched her from the workbench, not pretending to busy himself this time. He watched because he couldn't not watch. The change in her was subtle but unmistakable. Last night she had looked like someone waiting for the world to end. This morning she looked like someone waiting to understand it. After a few minutes, he tore open a ration bar and set it on the table. "It's dry, tastes like cardboard, but it'll help." She glanced at him once, then at the bar. Slowly, cautiously, her hand moved toward it. She broke off a piece and chewed carefully, like she hadn't eaten real food in days. Maybe she hadn't. Elias leaned against the wall, arms crossed loosely. "If you stay here a little while, that's okay. Nobody checks this place." Her eyes flicked up, not suspicious, curious, a small shift, but one he noticed instantly. He pointed to himself. "I fix things." He pointed to the drones and metal scraps on the bench. Machines, mostly. Her gaze drifted toward the bench. Her posture changed, barely, but enough for him to see it. Her shoulders lowered. Her eyes narrowed slightly in focus, interest. He picked up a broken stabilizer and placed it on the table between them. "This one's old, keeps shorting out. I was going to scrap it." She stared at it for a long moment. Then her brows knitted, her gaze sharpening like a lens coming into focus. She didn't touch it, but she leaned closer, studying the fractured panel. He didn't speak, just let her observe. Then, unexpectedly, she lifted one hand and traced a shape in the air above the stabilizer. A slow, controlled motion, like turning something or unlocking something unseen. Elias blinked. You know this model." No words, but her eyes told him enough. She remembered something mechanical, something precise. She curled back into herself quickly after that, as if she'd revealed too much. But Elias didn't push. Instead, he simply nodded, his voice soft and warm. "You can help me fix it later if you want." He didn't miss the way her fingers tightened around the cup. Not fear, not rejection, something else. Hope, maybe. The rest of the morning passed in quiet. Elias worked on a worn-out air vent while she sat near the heater, her gaze drifting between him, the tools, and the door. Always the door. He realized then that she wasn't watching it to escape. She was watching for danger. Someone had taught her that safety was temporary, conditional, fragile. By midday, the clouds outside began to glow, pale sunlight pushing through the gray. Elias stepped to the window and looked out over the wasteland. Sector Meridian 3 was waking, slow, sluggish figures moving between shelters, drones scanning rooftops. He sighed and turned back toward her. "If anyone comes here looking for you, I'll say I didn't see anything." Her head turned sharply. A flicker of alarm lit her eyes. He raised both palms. "I'm on your side, even if I don't know your story yet." She stared at him for a long moment. Then her gaze softened just slightly. Something unspoken passed between them, something fragile but real. A connection. Later, while the heater hummed and the faint hum of wind drifted through the vents, she rose from the cot and walked closer to him. Elias didn't move. He let her approach at her pace. She stopped just a few feet away, close enough for him to notice the faint golden shimmer beneath her skin, now clean and free of grime. Her hair, drying in soft waves, brushed the sides of her face. She looked different in daylight, still otherworldly, but not in a frightening way, in a way that made her feel too delicate for the ruins she'd been found in. Finally, she spoke. A single soft, breath-shaped word, "Ella." Elias blinked. "Is that your name?" Her lips parted, hesitant but brave. "Ella." The day settled into a quiet rhythm. a rhythm that felt almost unnatural in a place like Meridian 3. Too soft, too still. As if the outpost itself were holding its breath, unsure of what to make of Elias and the golden-skinned stranger now sharing its walls. Ella, her name lingered in the room like a warm echo. She stayed near the heater for most of the morning, legs folded beneath her, fingers loosely intertwined in her lap. She didn't cling to the corner like before. She didn't flinch at every sound. She watched, observed. Each small shift in her posture was a step outward from whatever darkness she'd crawled out of. Elias found himself glancing at her more often than he meant to. Not to check if she was breathing, not to make sure she wasn't afraid, just to memorize the way the light touched her skin. He hated himself a little for that thought. She was recovering, fragile, still shaking loose from trauma he couldn't even imagine. He shouldn't be admiring her, but he'd never seen anyone carry brokenness with such quiet grace. He turned back to the stabilizer on his workbench, pretending for the 10th time today that it required more focus than it did. Tools lay scattered across the bench in a pattern only he understood. He liked patterns, predictability. Control, that was why Ella unsettled him, not because she was strange, but because she made the air around him feel different, less predictable, softer. A sound broke his thoughts, soft, barely audible, Ella rising to her feet. He looked up as she approached, slow, deliberate, each step measured like she was relearning the ground beneath her. She stopped at the edge of the table where he worked. Her eyes traced the tools, then the half-open stabilizer. Her fingers hovered above it but didn't touch. She glanced at him, seeking permission. He slid the tool closer to her. "You can," he said quietly, "if you want." She lowered herself to sit beside the table, knees to the floor, one leg folded beneath her. The posture was instinctive, efficient, balanced, like someone trained for precise mechanical work. When she reached for the stabilizer, her touch was feather-light. She turned it in her hands, examining every seam, every weld. The frown of concentration on her face was subtle, but Elias caught it instantly. "You've done this before," he murmured. Her breath hitched almost imperceptibly. She didn't nod, didn't speak, but she wasn't denying it either. She worked in silence and Elias watched. The way her fingers moved was beautiful, not delicate, accurate, intentional. She tightened a connection point, adjusted the inner coil alignment, tapped twice on the sensor grid to loosen a jammed filament. She didn't just remember machines. Machines remembered her. When she was done, she handed it back to him with a small, almost shy gesture. Elias flipped the switch. The stabilizer hummed to life, lights blinking in smooth green instead of the erratic red they'd sputtered before. Ella inhaled sharply, a sound of surprise. Soft, pure, unguarded, she looked at him, and something in her eyes, something hidden behind layers of fear and silence, bloomed open. Elias smiled. "You're good." She lowered her gaze, almost embarrassed, hands curling softly in her lap. He watched her for a moment, then asked, "They taught you to fix things, didn't they? Whoever you were with." At that, her entire body went still. Not tense, frozen. He held up a hand. "Hey, don't answer, you don't owe me anything." The stiffness in her shoulders eased slowly. Her breath steadied. Her fingers relaxed. Then quietly, barely audible, she whispered, "Yes." Elias felt a sharp tug in his chest. Her voice wasn't just quiet, it was afraid of itself. He leaned back slightly, giving her space. "Okay, that's enough for now." She watched him for a long moment, her gaze searching his face like he was a tool she was trying to understand. Then she stood and walked to the window. The world outside lay under a pale, lifeless sky. Broken antennae swayed in the wind. Refugees moved like ghosts. Drones drifted overhead, unbothered by suffering. Ella pressed her fingertips to the glass. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the dull light, golden skin, amber eyes, hair dark and soft around her face. She looked otherworldly, but more than that, she looked unbearably lonely. Elias approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance behind her. "Do you remember where you came from?" She didn't turn, no. Her voice trembled, cracking like something fragile beneath pressure. "Only pieces, hands, cold rooms, lights." He swallowed. "What did they want from you?" She closed her eyes, brow tightening. "I fixed things her breath shook, fixed me." Elias' hands curled into fists. He wanted to say something, some comfort, some certainty, but nothing felt big enough to cover wounds he could barely imagine. So he did the only thing that felt right. He stepped closer. Not touching her, he wasn't ready, and neither was she. Just close enough that she knew she wasn't speaking into a void. "You're safe now," he said softly. "I won't let anyone take you back." Her shoulders lowered, the tension unclenching like a wound exhaling. She opened her eyes and turned her head just enough to look at him. A faint question lingered in her gaze. Why? Why help me? Why stay? He answered before she asked. Because no one saved my sister, he said quietly. Because I know what it looks like when someone still has a chance. Ella's lips parted slightly in surprise, not pity, understanding. She stepped closer in tiny increments, uncertain but determined. Then, braver than before, she touched his sleeve. Just a fingertip, just enough to feel the warmth of him. It was the smallest gesture she'd made. But Elias felt it down to his bones. She didn't pull away. Neither did he. They stood. The next few days slipped into a quiet routine, quiet but not empty. Elias fixed whatever the outpost threw at him. A failing vent fan, a sputtering comm relay, a heating coil that gave up halfway through the night. Ella hovered nearby each time, never intruding but never fully withdrawing either. She moved like someone relearning gravity, each step cautious, each motion measured. But she watched him, closely, almost hungrily, as if absorbing the shape of safety second by second. Elias pretended not to notice how often his gaze drifted back to her. One morning, he woke before dawn to the soft blink of the power status light on the wall. A minor surge, nothing unusual. He rubbed his face, stretched, and turned. Ella wasn't on the cot. He sat up instantly, breath hitching. Then he heard it, a quiet clicking, a tool tapping metal. He found her crouched beside the old drone on his workbench, the tiniest screwdriver between her fingers. Her hair fell over one shoulder, hiding part of her face, and the soft glow of the lamp traced a warm sheen along her skin. She didn't hear him approach. She was too focused. It wasn't just skill. It was fluency. She moved like someone who'd lived inside machines for years. Elias leaned against the wall, watching her work with a strange mixture of awe and ache. "You're up early," he said softly. She startled only a little, but didn't retreat like before. Her hand tightened around the tool, and she turned, eyes catching the dim light. "I heard the surge," she said. That voice still quiet, still rough from disuse, but growing steadier with each day. "You recognized it?" Elias asked. She nodded slowly. It sounded wrong. He stepped closer. "You trust your memory more than you think." Her gaze lingered on that, held it, waited. Then she looked down at the drone. It was trying to speak, but the core was misaligned. He smiled. "Machines speak to you, huh?" A small breath left her, almost a laugh. "I listened," she corrected. She resumed working, and Elias watched for a long moment before pulling up a chair beside her. He didn't touch the tools, didn't interrupt. Just joined her in the glow of the lamp, their shoulders almost touching. After a while, she spoke again. "They used me for this." He froze. She didn't look up. "They made me fix what they broke, over and over, machines, systems, people." Elias' jaw clenched. "People." Her hands stilled, fingers tightening on the screwdriver. "Neural rigs," she whispered. "Wiring minds, cutting them apart, forcing them to obey." Her voice grew distant. "They said I was good at it." "And were you?" Elias asked softly. She paused, a long, heavy breath. "I didn't want to be." He swallowed. "You're not that person anymore." Her eyes flicked to him, pained, disbelieving, needing to hear it again. "You're not," he repeated. Silence wrapped around them, warm and fragile. She put the screwdriver down and rested her hands in her lap. "You're kind," she murmured. He exhaled a quiet laugh. "I'm not sure anyone would call me that." Her eyes softened. "I do." Something tightened in his chest. Before he could speak, a sudden thudding roar rolled across the outpost, a low, mechanical rumble that made the walls vibrate. Ella's entire body went rigid. Elias stood immediately, stepping in front of her instinctively. Outside, through the reinforced window, a large patrol drone glided past, its searchlight sweeping low across the ruined street. Not the usual kind. Bigger, heavier. Armed, his pulse quickened. "Stay back," he whispered. But Ella was already moving, not away toward the window, gaze sharp and focused. "That's not local enforcement," she said under her breath. "Its frequency is wrong." "You can tell from here?" Elias asked. She nodded once. "It's searching." "For what?" Her silence answered for her. Elias felt the cold weight of realization settle in. "They're looking for you." Ella stepped backward until her back met the wall. Her breath came fast, not panicked, but calculating. "They're not supposed to come this far into the neutral zones," she murmured. "Someone must have reported an anomaly." Elias cursed softly. "Your people, or the ones who hurt you?" "I don't know," she whispered. The drone's light washed across their window, casting bright streaks across Ella's face. She flinched, not visibly, but internally, breath tightening into a silent knot. Elias lowered the blackout shutter, shutting out the light. Then he turned to her. We'll keep you hidden, he said. I've got a crawl space beneath the floor if they get suspicious. No, she shook her head sharply. I won't hide in a box again. His chest tightened painfully. Ella. I can't, her voice strained. Not again. He swallowed hard, nodding. Okay, then we won't hide you, we'll keep them away instead. Her eyes widened, uncertainty, disbelief, something close to fear of hope. You do that, she whispered. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate, letting her see every inch of his approach. You're here, you're alive, you're not theirs anymore. A breath shuddered through her. And as long as you're in this shelter, he said, voice steady, I'll protect you. Her fingers lifted, hesitated, then lightly touched his hand. Not a plea, not fear, something else, something beginning. Then the sound outside faded, the drone drifting away, its searchlight sweeping toward the distant ruins. Only when it disappeared did Ella exhale a shaking breath. Elias squeezed her hand gently. We're okay. She nodded, but her eyes remained on him, deep amber glinting with some. The night after the patrol drone passed was the first time Ella didn't sit by the door. Until then, every evening had ended with her curled near the wall closest to the exit, silent, watchful, ready to run. Even when she trusted Elias enough to speak, even when she fixed machines beside him, even when she said her name, part of her stayed coiled and alert. But not tonight. Tonight, something in her posture had changed. Subtle but unmistakable. Elias noticed it while pretending to organize his tools, though he'd barely touched them. He kept glancing over his shoulder as Ella sat by the heater, legs folded under her, her hair falling freely down her back. Her gaze wasn't stuck on the door anymore. It kept drifting toward him. He didn't comment. Some things broke if you touched them too soon. Later, while the battered solar lamps dimmed into a soft amber haze, Elias sat on the cot to check the damage on his boot tread. A mundane task. Routine. But Ella rose from the heater and walked slowly, quietly, until she stood in front of him. He looked up. Her amber eyes were clearer than he'd ever seen them. No fog of fear, no shadows of the unknown. Just Ella, fully present, fully awake. Elias, she said softly. He straightened. She didn't say his name often. Yes. She hesitated, as if searching for words she'd forgotten how to form. Then she sat down beside him, not a careful distance away, not across the room, but right there, close enough for their shoulders to nearly touch. Can I stay here? He blinked. You are here. No, she shook her head gently. I mean right here, next to you. The words landed inside him with a quiet force he didn't expect. He searched her expression. Was this fear? Was this desperation? Was she trying to anchor herself? But she met his gaze without flinching. She wasn't seeking protection. She was choosing closeness. You can, he said softly, only if you want to. Her lips curved in a tiny, grateful motion, and she shifted closer, the fabric of her borrowed shirt brushing his sleeve. Warm. Real, unbelievably fragile. He didn't move, didn't dare. She exhaled slowly, closing her eyes as if bracing against a memory, then leaned just slightly, barely, so her shoulder touched his. Elias' breath caught in his chest. Not because it startled him, because she wasn't trembling for the first time. Ella's voice was a whisper. When the patrol drone passed, you stood in front of me. I didn't think about it, he said. I know, she murmured. That's why it matters. Silence stretched gently between them, filled only with the hum of the heater and the soft static from the comm relay. Elias kept his hands still, careful not to impose. But Ella reached out, fingers trembling only at the edges, and brushed the back of his hand. Not a flinch, not a test. A choice. He let her fingers rest there. They will come again, she whispered. Not the drones, others, people searching for me. I remember enough to know that. Elias' stomach tightened. Then we'll be ready. She turned her head slightly, studying him. Why do you say we? His response came without hesitation. Because you're not facing them alone. Her breath hitched soft, stunned, almost disbelieving. Then she lowered her gaze and whispered, I don't know how to be safe. You don't have to, he said. Just stay near me, that's enough. Her fingers curled around his with more certainty this time. After a moment, she whispered, I used to fix people's minds, the ones they broke, the ones they needed to reshape. I wasn't trained to heal. I was trained to make them compliant. Elias felt a chill, and you resisted. I hid parts of myself, she said. Little pieces they couldn't reach, memories they couldn't lock, feelings they couldn't rewrite. She looked up at him now, eyes luminous in the dim light. You make those pieces come back. He didn't speak, couldn't. Something tightened inside him, something warm and painful and protective all at once. Ella shifted closer, leaning her temple against his shoulder. He exhaled slowly, carefully, and allowed his hand to move, resting lightly on her back, nothing more than a gentle weight. She froze for half a second, then melted into the touch. The moment held long and quiet until she whispered, "Elias, when I touch you, I don't feel afraid." He shut his eyes. "Good," he murmured. "That's how it should be." Another small silence. Then she lifted her face slightly, her breath brushing his jaw. "Will you stay with me?" she asked, "just for tonight." He looked at her, really looked, at the vulnerability, at the courage it took to ask, at the trust she offered so carefully. "Of course," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." She nodded and rose to her feet. Elias followed her to the cot where she slipped beneath the blanket. She didn't curl against the wall like she used to. She left space beside her, space meant for him. He sat beside her, then lay down slowly, giving her every chance to pull back. She didn't. She slid closer, her hand finding its quiet place against his chest, her head tucked beneath his chin. Her breath eased, deepening into a rhythm that no longer sounded like survival. It sounded like peace. And long after she drifted into sleep, the night passed softly, wrapped in the steady hum of the heater and Ella's slow, warm breaths against Elias' chest. She slept deeper than she ever had. No flinching, no shaking, no waking in panic. Her fingers stayed curled against his shirt all night, as if her sleeping mind refused to let go of the safety she'd finally found. Elias didn't sleep much. He watched the ceiling, listened to her breathing, memorized the weight of her head against him. He knew peace like this couldn't last forever, but for one night it did. At dawn, faint gold seeped through the cracks in the shutters. Ella stirred, eyelashes fluttering before she opened her eyes. For a moment she looked disoriented, caught between worlds. Then her gaze shifted upward. She realized she'd slept against him, and she didn't pull away. Instead, she whispered, "Good morning." The simplest words, but from her lips they felt sacred. Elias brushed a stray strand of hair from her forehead. "Morning." She sat up slowly, still half leaning into him, and let the blanket slip from her shoulders. Her hair glowed softly in the early light, and her golden skin shimmered as if the sun recognized her. He couldn't help staring. She noticed, and for the first time her eyes didn't dart away in confusion or fear. She smiled. A real one, warm, small, but full of something new, something healed. "You look at me like I'm not broken," she said quietly. "You're not," Elias replied, "not to me." Her breath caught. Whatever she was about to say never came because a sudden metallic clang echoed from outside. Not the wind, not rummaging scavengers, something heavier. She froze. Elias stood instantly, grabbing his coat and stepping toward the window. Ella followed, staying behind his shoulder. 3 figures approached from the far end of the outpost, moving with purpose, not the hesitant shuffle of refugees. Their silhouettes were clean, angular, military. The morning light glinted off metallic uniforms. Ella stiffened. "I know them." "Are they the ones who hurt you?" Elias asked. "No," she whispered. "Worse, they're retrieval." His stomach sank. Retrieval. They bring back what escapes. The figures reached the outer fence. The tall one flipped a scanning device toward Elias' shelter. A pulse of blue light swept across the area. Ella's voice trembled. "They know I'm here." Elias lowered the blackout shutter and turned to her. "Then we don't let them in." Her breath quickened, fear rising like a wave. "You don't understand. They don't take prisoners. They erase evidence. They." Elias placed his hands gently on her arms. "I'm not letting them take you." Her eyes shimmered, not with fear now, but with a painful, trembling hope. "You will die for me," she whispered. "Not planning to," he said, "but if it came to it." He cupped her cheek lightly. "I would rather die than hand you back to them." A soft, shattered sound left her throat. Not fear, emotion. She leaned into his touch just briefly, just enough to let the truth settle between them before the shelter door shook violently. A fist, metal, authority. "Open the door." A cold voice barked. "Sector Reclamation Division, we are searching for a missing asset." Ella's breath spiraled into panic. "Elias." He put a finger to her lips. "Go to the back wall, remember what I said, we stay together." She shook her head fiercely. "No, they'll kill you." "And if I open that door," he whispered, "they'll kill you." The door rattled again, harder. Elias stepped forward, unlocked the manual seal, but didn't open it. Instead, he cracked it just enough to speak. "What do you want?" A metallic helmet leaned toward the gap. "A high-value fugitive, non-human female, escaped from classified facilities, highly dangerous." Elias forced his heartbeat steady. "Haven't seen a soul." The officer pushed harder. "We detected a biometric trail, let us in." "No warrant," Elias said, trying to sound bored instead of terrified. "Neutral zone law says you don't get access." The officer slammed a hand against the metal. "You're obstructing an intersystem operation." Elias leaned closer. "And you're waking up the entire outpost. Leave." A long silence followed. Then the officer stepped back. "Very well," he said. "We'll search manually." Footsteps retreated. Elias exhaled slowly and shut the door fully, bolting it shut. When he turned, Ella was trembling, not from fear of them. From fear of losing him. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "They'll be back." "I know. They'll burn this place down." "I know." Her eyes filled bright and raw. "You're choosing me over your home." "I'm choosing you," he corrected. "Over everything." The words broke something inside her. She took one step, then another. Then she was in his arms, no hesitation this time, no trembling hands. Her fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer, her forehead pressed to his chest. "I don't know how to deserve this," she whispered. He wrapped his arms around her, steady and warm. "You don't earn it, you just accept it." She lifted her head, eyes shining with fear and devotion and something deeper, something she'd never had the right to feel. "Elias," she whispered, voice shaking, "if they take me, if they ever drag me back, I will forget everything, even you." His breath caught. "Then I'll make you remember." Her lips parted, caught between disbelief and yearning. He touched her cheek again, softer than before. "You're not an asset, you're not a tool, you're not theirs." He leaned closer. "You're Ella." She closed her eyes, tears slipping free, not of despair, but release. And when she opened them again, something inside her had settled, solid and unbreakable. She rose on her toes, her hands sliding behind his neck, and kissed him.